The morning sun cast golden rays across Westminster Abbey as thousands of people gathered along the streets of London. But today was not just any ordinary day. It was the day that would mark history forever. Prince William and Catherine, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, were preparing for what many considered the most important royal ceremony in decades. Inside Kensington Palace, Catherine stood before a magnificent mirror, her reflection showing a woman transformed. The ivory silk gown, crafted by the finest designers in Britain, hugged her figure perfectly. Each pearl and crystal had been sewn by hand, creating patterns that caught the light like stars in the night sky. Her dark hair was styled in an elegant updo, with delicate diamond earrings that once belonged to Princess Diana sparkling against her neck. William paced nervously in his private chambers, adjusting his ceremonial military uniform for the 10th time that morning. The red fabric was adorned with golden threads and royal insignia that told the story of centuries of British monarchy. His hands trembled slightly as he fastened the final button. Today, he would not just be a prince, but a future king accepting the weight of a nation's expectations. The couple had been preparing for this moment for months. They'd practiced their entrance countless times, studied every detail of royal protocol, and worked with choreographers to ensure their movements would be flawless. But nothing could truly prepare them for the magnitude of what lay ahead. Catherine's mother, Carol Middleton, entered the room with tears already forming in her eyes. She had watched her daughter grow from a young girl with dreams into a woman who would one day be Queen of England. The transformation seemed almost magical, yet she could still see the same kind heart and gentle spirit that had always defined. "Catherine, you look absolutely beautiful, darling," Carol whispered, adjusting a small fold in the gown's train.
Yes.
"Your father would be so proud if he could see you now." Meanwhile, photographers and camera crews from around the world had positioned themselves strategically along the route from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey. News anchors spoke in hushed, reverent tones as they described the historical significance of the day. This was not just a British event, but a global celebration that would be watched by over 2 billion people across every continent. The streets were lined with people who had traveled from every corner of the Commonwealth. Families had camped overnight just to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. Children waved small British flags while their parents held up smartphones and cameras, hoping to capture the perfect moment. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and joy. Back at the palace, the final preparations were underway. Security teams conducted their last sweeps of the route, ensuring every detail had been considered for the couple's safety. The royal carriages had been polished until they gleamed like jewels, and the horses that would pull them had been groomed to perfection. William and Catherine met in the palace's grand hallway, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Despite all the chaos and preparation surrounding them, they found peace in each other's eyes. This was their moment, their story, and nothing else mattered except the love they shared and the duty they were about to embrace together. The palace doors opened, and the sound of cheering crowds filled the air. The couple stepped forward. There, hands finding each other naturally, Catherine's gown flowed behind her like liquid silk, while William's posture radiated the confidence and dignity expected of future royalty. As they approached their carriage, the crowd's enthusiasm reached a fever pitch. People pressed against the barriers, hoping to catch the couple's attention. Children called out their names, and elderly citizens wiped tears from their eyes, remembering similar moments from decades past when they had witnessed other royal ceremonies. The carriage itself was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, decorated with golden details and pulled by 4 magnificent white horses. The coachman, dressed in traditional royal livery, sat proudly at the front. Understanding the honor of his role in this historic moment, Catherine gathered her gown carefully as William helped her into the carriage. Every movement was graceful and deliberate, as if they were dancing to music only they could hear. The train of her dress was arranged perfectly by her ladies-in-waiting, creating a stunning visual that photographers captured from every angle as the carriage began to move. The couple waved to the crowds with genuine warmth and appreciation. Catherine's smile was radiant and natural, while William nodded with the serious dignity expected of his position. Yet beneath their composed exteriors, both felt the weight of history and the incredible responsibility they were accepting. The journey, to Westminster Abbey would take them through the heart of London, past landmarks that had witnessed centuries of British history. Each street they traveled had its own story, its own connection to the monarchy they were now fully embracing. The couple knew that this ride was more than just transportation. It was a symbolic journey from their private lives into their public destiny. Citizens lined every inch of the route, creating a human corridor of celebration and support. The diversity of the crowd reflected modern Britain, with people of all ages, backgrounds, and cultures united in their excitement for this moment. Street vendors sold commemorative items, while local musicians played patriotic songs that added to the festive atmosphere. As their carriage rolled through the streets, both William and Catherine understood that their lives were changing forever. The carefree days of their courtship and early marriage were giving way to a lifetime of service, duty, and public scrutiny. Yet they faced this future together, drawing strength from their love and their shared commitment to the British people. The sound of church bells began to ring across London, announcing their approach to Westminster Abbey. The ancient stones of the building had witnessed coronations, weddings, and funerals of monarchs for nearly 1,000 years. Today, it would witness another chapter in the continuing story of the British royal family. Camera crews positioned along the route captured every moment, broadcasting the images to viewers around the world. Commentary in dozens of languages described the significance of what was unfolding, helping global audiences understand the traditions and protocols they were witnessing. The couple's carriage drew closer to their destination, where hundreds of dignitaries, world leaders, and Stupshite, members of the royal family, waited inside the abbey. Each step of their journey was bringing them closer to a moment that would define not just their lives, but the future of the monarchy itself. The anticipation was building to an incredible crescendo as London held its breath, waiting to witness what many believed would be the most emotionally powerful royal entrance in generations. The royal carriage approached Westminster Abbey as the ancient bells continued their magnificent song across London. Catherine felt her heart racing despite her outward calm. Through the carriage window, she could see the massive Gothic towers of the abbey rising against the bright blue sky. The building looked even more imposing than she remembered from their rehearsals. William reached over and gently squeezed her hand. His touch was warm and reassuring, reminding her that they were in this together. He had been preparing for moments like this his entire life, yet even he felt the butterflies dancing in his stomach. This was different from any other royal event they had attended. Today, the entire world was watching, and expectations were higher than ever before. The crowds outside Westminster Abbey were unlike anything either of them had ever experienced. Security barriers held back thousands of well-wishers who had arrived before dawn to secure the best viewing spots. Many wore elaborate hats and formal attire, treating this as the social event of the decade. Others had traveled from distant countries, wearing traditional clothing from their homelands while carrying British flags. Television crews from major networks around the globe had established broadcasting positions with perfect views of the Abbey entrance. News anchors spoke in excited whispers, describing every detail of the approaching carriage and speculating about what viewers might expect to see when the royal couple finally emerged. Inside the Abbey, over 2,000 invited guests sat in respectful silence, their heads turning occasionally toward the massive wooden doors through which William and Catherine would soon enter. The guest list read like a who's who of international society, politics, and culture. Presidents, prime ministers, celebrities, and members of European royal families filled the ornate pews. Queen Elizabeth, despite her advanced age, sat regally in the front row, her eyes bright with pride and anticipation. She wore a stunning blue ensemble with a matching hat, and the famous sapphire brooch that had belonged to Queen Victoria sparkled on her jacket. This was a moment she had been looking forward to for years, watching her grandson step fully into his royal destiny. Prince Charles and Camilla sat nearby, both understanding the historical significance of this ceremony. Charles had waited decades for his own moment to shine as future king, and today he was witnessing his son take another crucial step toward the throne. His emotions were complex, mixing pride with the bittersweet recognition that time was moving the family forward into a new era. The carriage finally came to a stop directly in front of the Abbey's main entrance. The sudden stillness felt dramatic after the motion and excitement of their journey through London. For a moment, neither William nor Catherine moved. They simply sat together, absorbing the magnitude of what was about to happen. Outside, the crowd fell into an expectant hush. Camera shutters clicked rapidly as photographers positioned themselves for the perfect shot. The carriage door remained closed for what felt like an eternity. Building the tension and anticipation to an almost unbearable level, Catherine took a deep breath and smoothed her gown one final time. The silk felt cool against her fingers, and she could hear the faint rustle of the fabric in the carriage's silence. Her bouquet, a carefully crafted arrangement of British flowers, rested perfectly in her lap. Every detail had been planned and rehearsed, yet nothing could truly prepare her for this moment. William stepped out first, his military uniform crisp and commanding in the bright sunlight. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause as he appeared, his tall figure and confident bearing immediately commanding attention. He turned back toward the carriage with an encouraging smile, extending his hand to help Catherine emerge. The moment Catherine's foot touched the red carpet that had been rolled out for their entrance, the crowd's enthusiasm reached a new level. Her gown caught the sunlight beautifully, the intricate beadwork and embroidery creating sparkles that seemed to dance across the fabric. The train flowed behind her like a river of silk, and her diamond tiara caught the light magnificently. Ladies in waiting immediately appeared to arrange Catherine's train, ensuring every fold lay perfectly for the photographs that would be studied and admired for generations to come. Their movements were practiced and efficient, the result of countless rehearsals and years of experience with royal protocol. The couple paused at the Abbey's entrance, acknowledging the cheering crowds with gracious waves and genuine smiles. Catherine's wave was elegant and natural, while William's bore the practiced dignity of someone born to royal duty. Yet both radiated warmth and accessibility that made them feel connected to the people celebrating their arrival. Photographers captured every angle, every expression, every detail of their appearance. The images were being transmitted instantly around the world, appearing on television screens, websites, and social media platforms within seconds. People in coffee shops, offices, and homes everywhere stopped what they were doing to watch this historic moment. The Abbey doors, massive wooden structures that had welcomed royalty for centuries, stood open before them. Beyond the threshold, the ancient interior glowed with warm light from thousands of carefully placed candles and electric fixtures designed to complement the medieval architecture. As they stepped forward together, their footsteps echoed slightly on the stone steps that had been worn smooth by centuries of important visitors. The sound seemed to announce their transition from the public celebration outside to the sacred ceremony waiting within. The Archbishop of Canterbury appeared in the doorway, his ceremonial robes flowing around him as he prepared to welcome the royal couple. His face bore the serene expression of someone who had officiated at countless important ceremonies. Yet even he seemed moved by the significance of this particular moment. Behind them, the crowds continued to cheer and wave their voices, creating a joyful soundtrack to this historic entrance. Street vendors moved through the masses, selling commemorative programs and small British flags, while children perched on their parents' shoulders for better views. Television commentators around the world described the scene in reverent tones, explaining the symbolism and tradition behind every gesture and detail. Royal historians provided context about similar ceremonies from the past, helping viewers understand how this moment fit into the long story of the British monarchy. Catherine glanced back once more at the celebrating crowds, her eyes sparkling with emotion. The sight of so many people who had come just to wish them well was overwhelming in the most beautiful way. These were her people now, and their joy and support meant everything to her. William placed his hand gently on the small of her back, a subtle gesture of support and partnership that photographers captured perfectly. Together, they took their final steps toward the Abbey entrance, leaving behind the sunshine and celebration of the London streets for the ancient sanctity of Westminster Abbey. The massive doors began to close slowly behind them, marking the end of their public journey and the beginning of the most sacred and intimate part of their ceremony. The crowds outside continued to celebrate, but William and Catherine were now entering a space where history, tradition, and divine blessing would transform them forever. The interior of Westminster Abbey enveloped William and Catherine in its ancient grandeur. The soaring Gothic arches stretched toward heaven, while soft light filtered through stained glass windows that had witnessed nearly a millennium of British history. The silence inside was profound after the jubilant celebration on the streets, broken only by the gentle rustle of silk and the soft footsteps of the royal couple on the worn stone floor. Every seat in the Abbey was filled with distinguished guests, their faces turned toward the entrance with expressions of anticipation and reverence. The Archbishop of Canterbury stood at the altar, his ceremonial vestments gleaming in the candlelight. Behind him, the ornate choir stalls were filled with singers whose voices would soon lift the ceremony to celestial heights. Catherine felt the weight of tradition surrounding her as they walked slowly down the nave. Each step took her deeper into a world of ancient customs and sacred rituals that had shaped the British monarchy for generations. The train of her gown whispered against the stone floor, creating a gentle rhythm that seemed to match the beating of her heart. The guests rose to their feet as the royal couple passed, creating a sea of formal attire and respectful faces. Catherine caught glimpses of familiar faces among the crowd, friends from their university days, family members who had watched their relationship blossom, and dignitaries from around the Commonwealth who had traveled great distances to witness this moment. Prince Harry sat in the front row, his face beaming with pride for his brother and sister-in-law. Despite the formal setting, his genuine joy was evident. And when William caught his eye, the two brothers exchanged a subtle nod that spoke volumes about their bond and shared understanding of royal duty. The Middleton family occupied seats of honor, their faces glowing with pride as they watched Catherine move with such grace and dignity down the Abbey's central aisle. Her mother dabbed at her eyes with a delicate handkerchief, overwhelmed by the sight of her daughter embracing her destiny as a future queen. International guests marveled at the ceremony's pageantry and tradition. Presidents and prime ministers, who were accustomed to their own elaborate state functions, found themselves moved by the Abbey's ancient atmosphere and the obvious sincerity of the young couple's commitment to their roles. As William and Catherine approached the altar, the organ began to play a traditional hymn that had been performed at royal ceremonies for centuries. The music filled the vast space, its rich tones reverberating off the stone walls and creating an almost ethereal atmosphere that seemed to connect the present moment with all the royal ceremonies that had come before. Catherine's composure was remarkable, but those who knew her well could see the emotion flickering in her eyes. This was the culmination of a journey that had begun years earlier when she first met William at university. She had never imagined then that their friendship would lead to this moment of such profound significance. William walked beside her with the bearing and confidence that came from a lifetime of preparation for moments exactly like this. Yet beneath his composed exterior, he was acutely aware that this ceremony marked a turning point, not just in his own life, but in the future of the monarchy itself. The Archbishop began the service with words that had been spoken at royal ceremonies for generations, his voice carrying across the Abbey with authority and warmth. The ancient phrases took on new meaning as they were applied to this young couple who represented the future of the royal family. Television cameras positioned discreetly throughout the Abbey captured every moment for the global audience. Directors cut between wide shots that showed the ceremonies, magnificent scale and intimate close-ups that revealed the emotions playing across the faces of William, Catherine, and their families. The ceremony included readings from distinguished guests, each chosen for their special connection to the royal couple or their significance within the Commonwealth. A young poet laureate delivered verses written specifically for this occasion, her words weaving together themes of love, duty, service, and hope for the future. When the time came for the most sacred part of the ceremony, the abbey fell into complete silence. Even the television commentators paused their descriptions, recognizing that some moments were too profound for words. The archbishop raised his hands in blessing, and the ancient words of consecration and commitment filled the sacred space. Catherine's voice was clear, strong as she spoke her vows of service to the British people. Each word was carefully enunciated, carrying the weight of promises that would shape the rest of her life. William's responses were equally firm and sincere, his tone reflecting both the solemnity of the occasion and his personal commitment to the responsibilities he was accepting. Exchange of symbolic items followed, each one representing different aspects of royal duty and service. The objects themselves were priceless artifacts that had been used in similar ceremonies for centuries, their very presence connecting this modern couple to the long line of monarchs who would come before them. Queen Elizabeth watched the proceedings with obvious pride and satisfaction. At her advanced age, she understood perhaps better than anyone the weight of the commitments her grandson and his wife were making. Her own coronation had taken place in this same abbey decades earlier. She could see in William and Catherine the same mixture of nervousness and determination she had felt as a young woman. The choir's voices soared during the ceremonies, musical interludes, their harmonies creating an atmosphere of transcendence that seemed to lift the entire gathering. The acoustics of the ancient building enhanced every note, creating a sound that was both earthly and divine. Foreign dignitaries found themselves deeply moved by the ceremony's combination of grandeur and intimacy. Many had attended state functions in their own countries, but few had experienced anything quite like the unique blend of tradition, spirituality, and personal commitment that characterized this royal ceremony as the service reached its climax. Sunlight streaming through the abbey's stained glass windows created pools of colored light that seemed to dance across the stone floor. The natural lighting added an almost magical quality to the proceedings, as if nature itself was blessing this union of hearts and commitment to service. The moment arrived for the final blessing, and the archbishop's voice rang out with words of benediction that had been spoken over British royalty for centuries. William and Catherine bowed their heads, accepting not just the blessing but the full weight of the destiny they were now embracing together. When they raised their heads and looked into each other's eyes, the love and determination they shared was visible to everyone present. This was more than a ceremony. It was a transformation that would affect not just their own lives, but the lives of millions of people across the Commonwealth and beyond. The service concluded with a magnificent recessional hymn that filled the abbey with joyful sound. As the final notes echoed off the ancient stones, William and Catherine prepared to make their exit. Now fully transformed into the royal couple that would help lead Britain into its future. The ceremony had reached its sacred conclusion, and now came the moment everyone had been waiting for: William and Catherine's emergence from Westminster Abbey as a fully transformed royal couple. Inside the ancient building, they shared a private glance that spoke of their shared understanding of what had just occurred. They were no longer just the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. They had accepted a sacred trust that would define the rest of their lives. The Archbishop of Canterbury offered his final words of blessing and encouragement, his voice warm with genuine affection for the young couple he had just consecrated to royal service. His hands rested briefly on their shoulders, a gesture that conveyed both his spiritual authority and his personal support for their journey ahead. The distinguished guests began to stir in their seats, preparing for the processional that would accompany William and Catherine's exit from the abbey. The anticipation was palpable, as everyone understood they were about to witness the couple's first public appearance following their transformation. Outside Westminster Abbey, the celebration had never stopped. If anything, the crowds had grown larger and more enthusiastic during the ceremony. People pressed against the barriers, craning their necks for the best possible view of the abbey doors, which would soon open to reveal the royal couple in all. Their ceremonial glory television crews made final adjustments to their equipment, knowing that the images they were about to capture would be broadcast around the world and preserved in history books for generations to come. News anchors took their positions, ready to provide commentary on what promised to be one of the most emotionally powerful royal moments in recent memory. Street vendors moved through the crowds, selling commemorative programs, small British flags, and postcards featuring the royal couple's official portraits. Children clutched these mementos tightly while perched on their parents' shoulders, their faces bright with excitement and wonder at being part of such a momentous occasion. The sound of the Abbey's massive organ began to drift through the closed doors, signaling that the recessional was beginning. The music was triumphant and joyful, chosen specifically to reflect the celebration and hope that this royal couple represented for Britain's future. Inside, William offered Catherine his arm, in the traditional gesture of escort, and together they began their slow procession toward the Abbey doors. Their pace was measured and dignified, allowing the invited guests to fully appreciate this historic moment while also building anticipation for their emergence into the London sunshine. Catherine's gown moved like liquid silk as she walked, intricate beadwork catching the Abbey's candlelight and creating sparkles that seemed to dance across the fabric. Her posture was perfect, the result of months of preparation and practice. Yet her natural grace made every movement appear effortless and spontaneous. The train of her dress flowed behind them like a royal river, tended carefully by her ladies-in-waiting, who moved with practiced precision to ensure no detail was out of place. Each fold and drape had been rehearsed countless times, yet the actual moment possessed a magic that no amount of practice could have fully prepared them for. William's bearing radiated the confidence and dignity expected of future royalty. His genuine love for Catherine was evident in the protective way he guided her through the processional. His military uniform, resplendent with ceremonial decorations, caught the light magnificently and emphasized his role as both a royal prince and a devoted husband. The invited guests rose to their feet as the couple passed, not many of them openly, emotional at witnessing such a powerful moment of transition and commitment. Foreign dignitaries who had attended numerous state ceremonies found themselves unexpectedly moved by the obvious sincerity and love radiating from the young couple. Queen Elizabeth followed behind them, her own processional, dignified and stately. At her advanced age, every public appearance was precious, and her presence at this ceremony spoke volumes about its importance to the royal family and the nation. Her sapphire brooch sparkled in the Abbey's light, and her expression radiated both pride and satisfaction. The Middleton family walked with obvious emotion, still somewhat overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. Mother held her head high with pride, while her father's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. They had raised a daughter who had just committed herself to serving an entire nation, and the weight of that responsibility was both humbling and inspiring. As the royal couple approached the Abbey doors, the sound from the crowds outside became more audible. Excitement and joy of thousands of well-wishers filtered through the ancient stones, creating a soundtrack of celebration that seemed to energize William and Catherine for their grand emergence. The massive wooden doors had remained closed throughout the ceremony, began to swing open slowly. The movement was deliberate and ceremonial, designed to build maximum anticipation for the moment. When the royal couple would appear before their people, the first glimpse of bright London sunshine streaming through the opening doors created a dramatic silhouette effect that photographers captured from every possible angle. The contrast between the Abbey's ancient interior and the vibrant celebration waiting outside symbolized the couple's transition from private ceremony to public service. Television directors cut between multiple camera angles, capturing both the couple's approach to the doors and the crowd's increasing excitement as they prepared to welcome their newly consecrated royal representatives. Commentary was kept to a minimum, allowing the power of the visual moment to speak for itself as William and Catherine reached the threshold. They paused for just a moment, taking in the sight of the massive crowd and the magnitude of the celebration awaiting them. The sound was overwhelming, thousands of voices raised in celebration, church bells ringing across London, and the general atmosphere of joy and festivity that seemed to encompass the entire city. Catherine's hand found William's, and they squeezed each other's fingers gently, drawing strength from their partnership as they prepared to step into their new public roles. This brief, intimate gesture was captured by the cameras and would become one of the most beloved images from the entire ceremony. The moment had arrived. The doors stood fully open. The crowd held its collective breath in anticipation, and William and Catherine prepared to take their first steps into the sunshine as a fully transformed royal couple. Behind them lay the ancient traditions and sacred commitments they had just embraced. Ahead of them waited a lifetime of service, duty, the love of a nation, the threshold between the Abbey's sacred interior and the celebrating world. Outside represented more than just a physical boundary. It was the bridge between their private transformation and their public dedication, between the solemn ceremony they had just completed and the joyful celebration that awaited them as they prepared to cross that threshold together. Both William and Catherine understood that they were not just stepping into sunlight, but into history itself. Their emergence would mark not just the end of this ceremony, but the beginning of a new chapter in the story of the British royal family. The moment William and Catherine stepped through the Abbey doors into the brilliant London sunshine, the world seemed to explode with celebration. The roar from the crowd was deafening, a wave of pure joy and excitement that washed over them, like a physical force. Thousands of voices rose in unison, creating a symphony of celebration that echoed off the surrounding buildings and seemed to shake the very foundations of Westminster Abbey. Catherine blinked in the bright sunlight, her diamond tiara sparkling like stars as her eyes adjusted to the dramatic change from the Abbey's candlelit interior. The silk of her gown caught the afternoon light magnificently, transforming her into what many in the crowd would later describe as looking like a fairy tale princess come to life. Every fold and detail of her dress was perfectly illuminated, creating photographs that would grace magazine covers and history books for decades to come. William stood tall beside her, his military uniform commanding immediate respect and attention. The ceremonial decorations on his chest caught the sunlight, while his confident posture radiated the authority and dignity expected of future royalty. Yet his face was animated with genuine joy and appreciation for the incredible welcome they were receiving from their people. The couple paused at the top of the Abbey steps, taking in the extraordinary sight before them. As far as their eyes could see, the streets were packed with celebrating citizens. British flags waved everywhere, creating a sea of red, white, and blue that stretched beyond the horizon. People had climbed onto lampposts, squeezed into windows of surrounding buildings, and claimed every possible vantage point to witness this historic moment. Camera crews from every major news organization in the world captured their emergence from multiple angles. Photographers clicked rapidly, knowing that these images would define how this moment would be remembered by history. The pictures being taken would appear within minutes on television screens, websites, and social media platforms around the globe, shared by millions of people eager to participate in this celebration. Television commentators struggled to find words adequate to describe the emotional power of the scene. Veteran royal correspondents who had covered dozens of similar events found themselves genuinely moved by the obvious love and support radiating from the crowd toward this young couple who represented hope for the monarchy's future. Catherine lifted her hand in her signature wave, a gesture that was both elegant and accessible. Her smile was radiant and completely natural, reflecting her genuine appreciation for the incredible welcome she was receiving. The crowd responded with renewed enthusiasm, particularly the women and young girls who saw in her a modern princess, who remained relatable despite her elevated status. William's wave was more formal but equally warm, acknowledging the crowd with the practiced dignity of someone trained from birth for moments like this. His eyes scanned the faces before him. Several times he pointed directly at individuals in the crowd, creating moments of personal connection that thrilled those lucky enough to receive his attention. The couple began their descent down the Abbey steps, each movement carefully controlled yet appearing completely natural. Catherine managed her gown's magnificent train with remarkable skill, never once appearing to struggle with its length or weight despite the complexity of navigating the stone steps. While maintaining perfect posture and grace, ladies-in-waiting followed discreetly behind them, ready to assist with any detail of Catherine's ensemble, while remaining invisible to the cameras and crowd. Their presence was a reminder of the centuries of tradition and protocol that surrounded every aspect of royal public appearances. Yet, their skill ensured that nothing interfered with the magic of the moment. As they reached the bottom of the steps, the royal carriage awaited them. Polished to mirror-like perfection and surrounded by the same magnificent horses that had brought them to the abbey. The coachman sat proudly at the front, understanding his role in this historic tableau, while the horses stood patiently, despite the enormous noise and excitement surrounding them. Security personnel, dressed in formal attire, but maintaining constant vigilance, created subtle barriers that allowed the royal couple freedom of movement while ensuring their safety. Their professionalism was invisible to most observers, allowing the focus to remain entirely on William and Catherine and their interaction with their people. Before entering the carriage, the couple took several minutes to walk along the barriers, greeting as many people as possible personally. Catherine's approach was particularly warmth, accepting flowers from children and taking time to speak briefly with elderly citizens who had waited hours for this moment. Her genuine interest in each person she met created magical interactions that brought tears to many eyes. William followed beside her, his own interactions characterized by the blend of formality and warmth that defined his public persona. He showed particular attention to veterans and service members in the crowd, his military background creating immediate connections with those who had served their country in different ways. Children in the crowd were especially thrilled when either William or Catherine stopped to speak with them. Young faces lit up with wonder and excitement, and many of the brief conversations were captured by cameras, creating images that perfectly captured the hope and continuity that this young royal couple presented. The flowers that Catherine received from well-wishers began to accumulate into a sizable bouquet, her colors adding even more vibrancy to an already spectacular visual scene. Each flower represented someone's personal wish for happiness and success in her new role, and her careful attention to preserving each gift demonstrated her understanding of their symbolic importance. International guests who had attended the ceremony emerged from the abbey behind them, many stopping to watch and photograph the couple's interaction with the crowd. Foreign dignitaries, accustomed to their own state ceremonies, found themselves impressed by the obvious genuine affection between the British royal family and their people. The celebration showed no signs of diminishing as the couple continued their walkabout. If anything, the crowd's enthusiasm seemed to grow as more people realized they might have a chance for personal interaction with the newly consecrated royal couple. The patient wait that had begun before dawn was being rewarded beyond anyone's expectations. Street musicians had positioned themselves throughout the crowd, adding live musical accompaniment to the celebration. Traditional British songs mixed with contemporary melodies, creating a soundtrack that captured both the historical significance of the moment and its relevance to modern Britain. Television ratings around the world reached extraordinary levels, as people everywhere paused their daily activities to witness this moment. In countries throughout the Commonwealth, viewing parties gathered in community centers, schools, and homes, creating a global celebration that transcended borders and connected people through their shared appreciation for this royal couple. As William and Catherine finally approached their carriage for the return journey to the palace, both understood that they had just experienced something truly extraordinary. The love and support they had received from their people would sustain them through the challenges and responsibilities that lay ahead, creating a foundation of mutual respect and affection that would define their reign for decades to come. As William and Catherine settled into their royal carriage for the journey back to Buckingham Palace, the emotional weight of what they had just experienced began to truly sink in. The carriage's luxurious interior provided a moment of relative quiet, though the sounds of celebration still filtered through from the crowds lining their return route. Catherine carefully arranged her gown around her, while William placed his hand gently over hers, both of them processing the magnitude of the transformation they had just undergone. The return journey would take them through different streets of London, allowing even more citizens the opportunity to share in their celebration. The route had been carefully planned to maximize public participation while showcasing the historic beauty of the capital city. Every balcony, window, and rooftop along the way was filled with people eager to catch another glimpse of the royal Couple. Catherine gazed out at the celebrating crowds, her eyes bright with unshed tears of gratitude and wonder. The faces she saw were filled with such genuine joy and hope that it took her breath away. Young mothers held up their babies, hoping for a royal wave that would become a treasured family story for generations.
Ow.
Elderly couples stood hand in hand, their faces reflecting memories of other royal celebrations. They had witnessed throughout their long lives the carriage moved at a stately pace, allowing time for the royal couple to acknowledge as many well-wishers as possible. William pointed out particularly touching scenes to Catherine, a group of schoolchildren who had obviously been practicing their waves. A veteran in his uniform standing at perfect attention, and an elderly woman in a wheelchair who was being held up by her family so she could see over the crowd as they traveled through the heart of London. The couple passed landmarks that held special meaning for both the city and the monarchy. Each building and monument they passed had witnessed centuries of British history, and today they were adding another golden chapter to that ongoing story. The Tower of London, Big Ben, and other iconic structures seemed to stand as silent witnesses to this moment of celebration and renewal. The diversity of the crowd was remarkable and deeply moving to both William and Catherine. People of all ages, backgrounds, and cultures had come together to celebrate not just their royal couple, but the unity and continuity that the monarchy represented in modern Britain. Children waved flags featuring the colors of their heritage, alongside the Union Jack, creating a beautiful tapestry of multicultural celebration. Television coverage continued to capture every moment of their journey, with commentators noting the obvious emotional impact the public's response was having. On the royal couple, veteran royal correspondents remarked that they had rarely seen such genuine connection between royalty and their people, and the authenticity of the moment was being felt by viewers around the world. Street vendors had positioned themselves along the entire route, selling commemorative items that people were snapping up as mementos of this historic day. Photographs of William and Catherine, small British flags, and specially printed programs were changing hands rapidly as everyone wanted something tangible to remember this extraordinary celebration. The carriage passed groups of international tourists who had traveled great distances just to be part of this moment. Their faces showed amazement at finding themselves in the middle of such a significant historical event, and many were recording everything on their phones to share with friends and family back home. Local residents had decorated their homes and businesses with bunting, flowers, and royal portraits, transforming ordinary London streets into a festival route worthy of the occasion. Shop owners stood in their doorways, many closing their businesses for the day so they and their employees could participate in the celebration. As they approached Buckingham Palace, the crowds grew even denser and more enthusiastic. The palace gates were surrounded by thousands of people who had been gathering since early morning, creating a human sea of celebration that stretched as far as the eye could see. The famous balcony where the royal family traditionally appeared for major celebrations was already being prepared for what everyone hoped would be another magical moment. Catherine felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support they had received throughout the day. This was beyond anything she had imagined when she first fell in love with William all those years ago at university. The shy young woman who had once worried about living up to royal expectations had been transformed into a confident future queen who clearly had the support and affection of her people. William squeezed her hand as the palace came fully into view, its facade gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. The building that would now be such a central part of their lives looked both majestic and welcoming, ready to embrace them as they stepped fully into their roles as senior members of the royal family. The palace courtyard was filled with additional distinguished guests who had gathered to welcome the couple home from their ceremony. Members of the royal household, government officials, and other dignitaries stood in formal reception formation, ready to participate in the final chapter of this historic day. As their carriage rolled through the palace gates, both William and Catherine understood that they were crossing another threshold. The public celebration would continue outside, but they were now returning to the private world of royal duty and responsibility that would define the rest of their lives. The carriage came to a gentle stop in the palace courtyard, and for a moment, the couple sat in quiet contemplation of all that had transpired. The sounds of the celebrating crowd were still audible beyond the palace walls, a reminder that their people were continuing to share in their joy even as the formal ceremonies concluded. Palace staff appeared to assist with their exit from the carriage, their movements precise and respectful as they helped Catherine manage her magnificent gown one final time. The train that had flowed so beautifully throughout the day was carefully arranged as she stepped onto the palace's red carpet. William emerged with the same dignity and grace he had displayed throughout the day, but now there was something different. In his bearing, a sense of completion and acceptance that spoke to the successful conclusion of their transformation. He was no longer just preparing for his future role, he was fully embracing it. Together, they walked toward the palace entrance, their steps marking the end of their public journey and the beginning of their private reflection on one of the most significant days of their lives. Behind them, the celebration continued in the streets of London and around the world. But ahead of them lay the quiet satisfaction of duty accepted and love shared. The palace doors closed behind them, but the emotional impact of their stunning entrance and the lasting impression they had made on everyone who witnessed it would resonate for years to come. They had not just participated in a ceremony. They had created a moment of pure magic that reminded everyone why the monarchy continued to capture hearts and imaginations across the globe. The day that had begun with nervous anticipation had concluded with triumph, joy, and the absolute certainty that William and Catherine were ready for whatever challenges and opportunities their royal future might bring. Their stunning entrance had indeed left a lasting emotional impact that would be remembered and celebrated for generations to come.